Hey there, Jacqueline Bear here. So I did my first solo art show that I've done in years. Back when I first moved here, I saw that a local art studio was doing like an open call for artists to submit a piece of work with the theme of delicate. And I knew I had the perfect piece, so I put it in the show, it got in, there was a reception, and I went and I saw my piece hung on the wall, and I don't know, it just sparked something in me to want to do my own show again. I've done shows before, but it has been many years since I've done that. I've done shows in college, I've done shows in my 20s with other artists. Then in 2016, my now husband and I did an art show together where we showcased our photography, like our photographs from our month-long road trip where we went all over the West. And it was so fun to curate something like that. So it's been that long since I've had my own art show. This year, I knew a bucket list item for me was to do a solo art show, and I just hung it up last week, and I'm so excited. I want to take you back to the beginning of how I got from wanting to do a solo art show to now where I actually have done it. So back in April, I was at a local coffee shop, 81301, the coffee shop that has all of my artwork in it right now. And I was there and I noticed that they had art up. And a friend of mine was like, yeah, they do art shows here. So I went up to the counter and I ended up chatting with the lady who puts this together. Now it's very low key at this coffee shop. So they just had a list, like a waiting list. And she goes, you have the spot for October. So I was like, cool, 6 months for me to curate and put together a whole art show is perfect timing for me to do all of those things. So I got my name on the list, gave her my phone number, and we chatted, and I was just so excited. And then just a little bit like scared that, ooh, I'm getting back into doing an art show, but I knew that 6 months was going to be a perfect amount of time. Or was it 5 months? April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 6 months, I can count. 6 months for me to pull this all together. So my name was on a list. I came home and I started brainstorming. I sat out on my balcony. I had my sketch pad, I had a pencil, and I just started brainstorming, which I grabbed my notes that I had. I wanted to come up and just, I don't know, brain dump, get all the ideas. I was just so excited to have a show. I knew the size of the space, that I had this one really big wall, and what I wanted to do. So I wrote down what to even call the show, like different themes that I wanted to do. I was brainstorming sizes of paintings. So far I had just painted really itty bitty tiny, and I knew I wanted to paint a little bit larger. I brainstormed what type of feeling I want it to be, what materials I wanted to use. Did I want to use paints? Did I want to use, graphite drawings? Did I want to experiment? So I wrote all of them down on these sheets of paper, even to the point of I knew I wanted, like, an idea was to have torn edges all around the pieces, or if I wanted to thrift frames or buy new. I had this really fun idea to take Polaroids that have been messed up or accidental and paint on them. So I had all of these ideas and I just started writing them all down, how many pieces I wanted, just all the things that go into it. So at this point, it's May, June, it's the beginning of summer. I knew that my paintings or whatever I was going to create was going to have a more summery feel to it. So I knew I also needed to write down the hikes that I wanted to do to make sure I got the reference photos for me to look off of. I started playing around with my ideas. So I had written down so many and I started playing with ideas. I got charcoals out. I started drawing on raw canvas. I started to paint on raw canvas. So you've probably seen this one before, but I started just getting my ideas out of my brain from the paper and then onto the different canvases and, starting to familiarize myself with my art materials. I even took some of my old Instax Polaroids, the ones where sometimes you accidentally take a photo or it turns out way too dark or way too light. I've always saved those because I knew I was going to do something with them. So I started experimenting with painting on them. I had this whole idea of a whole bunch of floral paintings. Ended up not using these for this particular show, but I have cool other ideas. So it was just a fun beginning of summer, playing around, experimenting, seeing what I really wanted this show to be. And I even started sharing on my Beyond the Studio newsletter that I have. I started sharing little sneak peeks of when I was doing these Polaroid little experiments, and just the feedback I got from it was great. And I just really enjoyed sharing that with you all. So that was really fun to kind of have this little community of rooting me on for my art show. So that just felt really, really nice too. It was a nice feeling. July has rolled around and I'm getting busier with my photography job by going out and photographing elopements and doing more hikes and just being in nature. I wasn't specifically working on my paintings for the art show, but I was practicing my paintings. I was sitting on my balcony and painting. I was in the studio painting things, just anything that came to mind. It didn't even have to relate to this art show or any of my, thoughts or brainstormed ideas. I just wanted to hone my skills more and get better at it so that when I was ready to sit and actually paint what I wanted for the show, I was loose, I was ready, I was just ready to dive in. I also started planning some of the parts of the frames. I really, really wanted to thrift all of my frames. So that's why another reason I hadn't specifically started painting for the show, because I didn't know what size frames I was going to be thrifting. But here in this small town that I live in, it is very difficult to get my hands on decent quality art frames that I wanted to use for the art show. So skip ahead a few months, I ended up just going to IKEA to get my frames. But during the summertime, I was spending any time I could at the thrift stores, at the secondhand stores, trying to find frames that I couldn't quite curate a whole collection. It's August now, and I knew that I had 2 months to get all of my pieces done, and I had 0 pieces done at that point. I had lots of ideas and experiments, and sadly no thrifted frames yet or anything, but it didn't dishearten me. I was like, I have 8 weeks. I'm gonna get this done. And I also knew that I still had some hikes I needed to do around the San Juan Mountains to get reference photos. And yes, I can look online to get reference photos, but I really love experiencing these places and taking my own. So my husband and I went and did some of those hikes, like island lakes and ice lakes here around the San Juans. And Island Lake was the first one that I painted of my series. I was very, very excited to paint that one, so I just dove straight into it. So August, I was finally beginning, and I had chosen my sizes, so I cut all my papers. I got my 5x7s, my 4x6s. I also knew I wanted to do a couple of my little itty bitty paintings because they're so cute, and this is definitely my comfort zone, so I knew I needed to get some of these little ones in there too. Then it was September, and at that point I think I only had 2 of the 10 pieces done on top of my work schedule that I had, where I was flying off for work and I was doing local things for work, so I really had to kick it into high gear. So this was a month of painting as much as I could, filming as much as I could to have for these videos. I also went to the Front Range in Denver for work, and while I was there, I went to IKEA because that's where I could find a whole collection of frames that was going to work perfectly for my whole show. Since I wasn't able to thrift anything, I had spent all summer trying to find what I wanted to find. So IKEA frames came in clutch for me. And with having all of those frames now, and I knew what sizes I was painting, I then started to sketch out different layouts that I could do. I roughly remembered like how big the wall was at the coffee shop, but I wanted to start curating how it was going to be laid out. Like, did I want to do just a nice long one, like it was, you know, a professional gallery with each piece and lots of spacing in between it? Did I want to make little collections of them? And I had one more big piece that I was going to do, but it wasn't going to be a painting. It was going to be pressed wildflowers that I was so excited to get framed, and it looked so good. And it was my biggest piece because the biggest frame I got was like an 8x10, and I wanted just one big staple piece, and I think it just tied the whole collection together. Days before, I wrote my artist bio, I wrote all the title cards, figured out the pricing for each piece, and did all of those like little paper pieces that I needed to get printed and cut and everything. I needed to take pictures of every single piece because I did a QR code for people to go on my website to buy the pieces. So I needed to have photos of each one's like overall photo and close-ups. So I had to do all of that work and that preparation as well. And just a lot of little moving parts. And then of course also framing all the pieces. So not only did I take pictures of them before they were in their frames, I then had to frame each piece. And the itty bitty tiny ones, I had to cut different paper to go behind it. I didn't have the mat board customized to be that small because I knew I was just going to tape it onto other paper, so it's a little bit more like floating, if that makes sense. So I had a lot of work and preparation that I had to do the days leading up to hanging. And on top of that, I also had to reach out to the coffee shop to ask when is a slower time of day, because they're only open for so many hours. They're like, we're way busier in the morning. You should come around like lunchtime or after lunchtime because we slow down a bit. So it was perfect. My husband and I went like right after lunchtime, and where I was hanging the art show, there was like 3 tables and they were all clear. So I like jumped at it, put my stuff down because I was like, I don't want to inconvenience somebody sitting there sipping on their coffee and having to like, they'd probably move, but you know, having to like hammer nails around them or anything. So I was very excited that the moment I went in, it was nice and clear, and it worked out wonderfully. There wasn't like too many people. They had tons of other seating on the other side of the coffee shop that people were able to like sit and, you know, do their thing. And it took me no time at all, really, like maybe an hour and a half, I'd say, of me sitting there measuring. I brought my measuring tape, I brought my pencil to mark where it needed to be. There was already holes in the wall because again, this was a very low-key like venue space. So it kind of worked in my favor because you could tell where there were these 2 lights where the center was, because there was already like little holes. So it kind of like worked in my favor, or at least I used it in my favor. And because I had already drawn out a couple different possibilities, it was a no-brainer that my option number 2 was going to work the best for the space that I had. I just had to do a few minor tweaks of, you know, where I was going to put my like about bio and things like that. So Ryan was there to help me. He was really good at like standing back and being like, oh, just a little bit more to the left. And he was good at holding the pieces so I could measure things. And it went really smoothly. It was really, really cool because while I was there, 2 people, one person, when I was hanging, Ryan was like, some person came over and like gave a thumbs up of like, the art looks good. And then there was this other gentleman that was looking at it, and I could tell he wanted to like chat or something. So I like turned to him and he was like, I just want to say these are awesome pieces. And he just said it was really good. And that warmed my heart so much to be like, wow, I'm in the middle of hanging my art show and I already have 2 people coming up and like telling me it's great. So, you know, just confidence booster. And then after an hour and a half of hammering and hanging and tweaking little things and hanging all the title cards and everything that went into it, I was done. It looked great. more people were like gone from the other tables. So I sat down and I had Ryan take some pictures and video of me because I felt so accomplished for doing this show, and it was just a really great moment, and I wanted it documented so I could, have that as a nice little memory, and then also share it on social media and share it with you all here on this video. I learned that an art show is a lot of work, but totally doable. I will have a video coming out soon on how to have an art show, so I'm very excited for that. This is more just about what this art show was, so stay tuned for that. But I mostly learned that I am capable of doing this. It's not just for college art students, it's not just for retired folks who may have more time on their hands and want to do these shows, because that was my perception of doing these art shows. That's what I saw. So this just showed that I am capable of doing this in my mid-30s, and that you can do it at any time in your life as well. And I knew that I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and I definitely did. The most major thing that I got from this was going from a little itty bitty 1.5 by 2 inch, little piece of paper to painting larger. I've gotten really used to painting with acrylic gouache on such a tiny little piece, So then scaling up from this to this, that was a little daunting for me. I have painted large in the past, but not with acrylic gouaches, because that's just a new medium for me to paint larger. I've done it for many years as smaller pieces or in my sketchbook, but getting up to this size, it was daunting, it was exciting, and I definitely learned that I can get a whole lot more detail in my landscapes, in the florals, in the trees, in the mountains, and the lakes. It was just really, really fun to paint larger and step out of my comfort zone to get a piece this big. So it was really fun to see my skills get better as I was painting larger. So it makes me really excited for the future of painting larger pieces, and maybe even larger than a 5x7. We shall see how I go. I learned how to set deadlines for each of my art pieces. I learned how to organize my vision for this art show. I learned how to prep for an art show again, because again, it had been years, and then I started remembering all these things that I wanted to do for a professional art show, and it all just came back, but I had to relearn how to do that because I put hours and hours and hours into this show. When you think about the whole 6 months leading up to it, so many hours got put into this project, and I am just so thrilled that it's finally here, because I have 10 beautiful pieces that are hung up at a local coffee shop with so many eyes that are seeing it, and that fills me with so much joy. I get compliments on my work. I get people on my website potentially to buy. As of right now, no one has, but it's only been up for a few days, and I just learned how to paint larger, and I loved this whole learning experience and excited to see where it's going to take me next. So overall, I am very pleased with this art show. I'm excited to do more in the future. I'm excited to see what's going to happen this month when all the pieces come down, what pieces may sell, what pieces don't. Whatever doesn't sell, I'll put it on my site so you can see that. I'll probably, in my Beyond the Studio newsletter, give first dibs to those folks, so be sure to sign up for that if you want to know about those going-ons. But I hope that you liked today's video. This was a very fun experience for me. I'm very excited to create another video where it's all about how you can do your own solo art show, so be on the lookout for that, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers!